Rise and shine, nerds.
You're tuned in to the Back Row Morning Show, proudly a part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. I'm Radio Matt.
And I'm Mo. We're caffeine-fueled and ready to talk your ears off.
This week on the show, now that the midterms are over, we're going to take a look at the state of division in America and how we're stuck with it. Talking about politics as the midterms have come to an end and the 2024 presidential election officially kicks off. Before we dive into the main topics, we wanted to invite our Discord buds to join in on the discussion. And so far today, it looks like we have Thray. How are you today, Thray?
I'm awake, which, all honesty, considering the time zone difference, is impressive that you're more awake.
We also have Brian. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Hanging in there. I'm sick, but hanging in there. And then we have John. How are you, John?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
All right. So we got all three y'all in here. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, can I officially ask now, since you've officially met her and I have not, is Thray's name?
That's not my information to disclose.
I don't.
But Thray's in.
I don't assume so.
Thray can say, I would rather not disclose.
She would rather not disclose.
Okay. That's fine. Jeez. I was just asking.
I don't think it is. No. Sheesh. I didn't actually ask that question.
You just introduced the other two by their name, their birth given name.
It's all good.
Their Christian name.
Thanks, Thray. Man, I didn't really mean for it to be like a dun 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 moment.
Thray's her name. All right.
Yeesh.
Our question for today is, when did you first start paying attention to politics? That was a weird noise.
That was awfully squeaky.
That was my chair. Sorry.
Okay.
Your chair demands more love and affection and possibly WD-40.
I was going to say.
I don't know if you saw in our chat thread, but Eli Poppery says it is her name and she is a delight.
Eli. Also,
right.
Spoiler, he's taller than
he's
lets on.
Way tall. My goodness. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I didn't think he was who he was until the last day.
I don't know. He makes a very passable 10th Doctor. If you put two of them next to each other, it's the same picture, man.
All right, question. When did we first start paying attention to politics? Who wants to go first?
So I started really kind of paying attention to politics in high school with like U.S. government class, and as I was getting closer to voting age, because I actually was able to vote on my 18th birthday. The primary for my state for that year was actually on my birthday, so I actually was able to register early because I would be 18 on that day, so I could actually vote. So that was the first one that I really paid a lot of attention to, because I was like, all right, if I'm going to actually vote in this, I want to have an idea of be kind of an informed voter. And so I'm not huge into politics, but I pay enough attention to have an informed decision.
Okay, before you vote. What year was the primary that you voted in?
It was 2004.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that was my first year too, voting, 2004. All right.
The first election I really remember was the 2000 election between Bush
and Gore, the hanging Chad.
Yeah, that's the one that I really remember hearing about and kind of paying attention to, because I don't really remember the 96 election when Clinton won his second term. So I couldn't tell you much about that, but I do really remember that 2000 election.
Yeah.
So kind of from there on is when I started paying attention.
Okay. What about you, Thray?
Well, you see, first off, there was these annoying social constructs that were mock elections that they held in elementary school. So everything got oversimplified. Like, if you liked animals, you voted for that guy. If you liked, if you were a Christian, you voted for that guy, and that was the simplistic issues according to elementary school students. And it, was just that kind of thing. But really, when politics became a focus and something that, you paid attention to the details and you kind of learned as you grew, even if you weren't voting yet, was after 2001. So, yeah, the world got more complicated after that. It wasn't, red versus blue, which is your favorite color. It was, oh, there's a war and we need to have opinions on how it's handled.
Right.
And even if you're 10 or 11 or 14, you think that you've got a better handle on the issues than the adults do. And therefore, we'll talk about it in the halls, in the classroom, on the playground, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always been a thing in my world to try to be informed on what both sides were saying and why. So that you can respond as graciously as possible if called to.
Right.
I think that the bigger chapter in my world was learning to let go and not necessarily be as engaged in politics as it seemed so deadly important growing up.
Yeah, and that's hard to do if you've let yourself get really involved in politics already. Mm-hmm. To try and back up from that, very difficult. Yeah. John, what about you?
My exposure and involvement in politics also began at a young age. I think it was 5th grade. We had it might have been 4th grade. Gosh.
Indoctrination, they start young.
We had a mock election in the grade school, and I was George Bush, my cousin was Bill Clinton, and my best friend was Ross Perot.
Oh, I forgot about Ross Perot being a part
How
of
did
that
you
election.
forget about Ross Perot?
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Uh-huh.
You're
I'm
welcome for
remembering,
that.
I think it was Amanda Bynes
Uh-huh.
that played Ross Perot.
Yep. Yep.
Nickelodeon.
What was the name of that show? All that. All that.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, actually, I thought it was Josh Serber that did the Ross Perot.
No,
not
I think
Amanda Bynes.
I'm pretty sure it was
I think it was
Bynes,
Amanda
yeah.
Bynes. I think.
No, you're thinking Earboy. Josh
Oh, that's
Server
right.
was Earboy.
Wow. That was really mean.
But it's true.
But
So those mock
that
elections
started really young, and then
were really a
through.
thing. Huh?
What are you saying?
Those mock elections in elementary school were really a thing. I've only ever seen those on TV.
Oh yeah.
I've never had a mock election.
Oh no.
Really?
We did.
Oh
them.
yeah,
we do them.
Oh, yeah, they
Yeah.
march. They march
Wow.
all of the grades, including the preschoolers, down to the principal's office to cast a very
Wow.
secret and
So-
not totally talked about in the hallway ballot.
Exactly.
I went to a Catholic
We had-
school in elementary,
we had
and
a
we didn't
debate.
do any weird stuff.
Like we
Actually, we
did
did
a
a lot of
mock
weird
debate up on stage during an assembly.
That's really cool.
And I remember pointing. Oh my gosh! I remember pointing my finger at my cousin after he said that he would bring everybody change, and I said the only change that this man will bring is that's all that will be left in your wallets. And I don't know why I said that, but I remember everybody cheering and clapping, and the reaction I got,
That's fantastic.
and it was great.
Oh, that's so good. I honestly thought that was something that only happened in sitcoms. Like I did not think it was a real thing that kids did.
Yes. Turns out my life is a sitcom.
Like I remember voting for like class president and stuff in junior high and middle school, but even that wasn't like you can go to a weird ballot or whatever. They passed out a form in class, you checked what you wanted and passed it back. Wow, that's really neat. Okay, Mo, what was your first experience with politics?
What are politics?
You've never gotten involved?
I don't ever get involved. I'm about to have tomatoes thrown at me, and it's okay. I don't care. I have only voted one time in my entire adult life.
You're like my wife. I have to really nag her to remind her to get to the,
So here's the thing, though. Like, I'm not registered to vote where we live. I can't vote where we live. And doing an absentee ballot, I don't trust. I don't trust.
I understand that.
Yeah, voting by absentee ballots. So, because I have been a military spouse for most of my adult life, we have been able to keep our permanent address back home. And so I've only actually been in our county of residency once during an election year. And so that was the year that I was able to vote, and that was the year that Trump won. So
it's your fault.
I kind of had mixed feelings as to whether or not I should participate again. But I will say that the very first Monday of Thanksgiving break, I am going to get my New Mexico driver's license. And
You still don't have a New Mexico driver? Wow.
No, because I
remember you telling me that you had the one from there, but I feel like that was 5 years ago, and I assumed by now.
Well, no, because we can claim our home of residency at being a military family. Our home of residency is our home in Tennessee.
I just assumed it would expire and that you wouldn't go back and get another one.
No, you just fill it out online and
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my driver's license photo is, it looks nothing like me. It's from 2008. They've just continued reissuing it with a different expiration date. Anyway, back to what I was saying on Monday of 2 Mondays from now. No, next Monday. I get to go get my New Mexico driver's license and register to vote in our county.
So you'll vote in 2024 is what
Yes, I will.
Congratulations.
Yes. I'm almost 40 years old and I will actually
You'll be a New Mexican.
I'm honestly very excited about it.
Will you have a kid voting with you?
Oh my word.
Won't you?
Wow. Well, no, because he won't turn 18 until the following month.
Okay.
In 2024?
I was about to do the whole life comes at
Oh,
you
no,
fast.
no. You're right. He'll
2024, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yep, you're right. I will have. Wow. Topher and I will be voting together. Wow. Wow. Thanks, Thray. That is actually something that I'm kind of really looking forward to now. Hey.
All right. So my first exposure to politics is way different than everybody else's. Mine came on The Simpsons.
Of course it did.
I don't know if you remember the Treehouse of Horror episode where
Horrors.
horror.
I already know what one you're talking
Yep.
about.
Where Kang and Kodos, the two aliens, kidnap Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, and then like assume their bodies.
Yep. I remember
And
this
go
one.
through the whole thing, and then they get found out. They get found out to be aliens, and they yell at the crowds. But what are you gonna do? It's a two-party system. You must vote for one of us. And someone in the crowd says, "Well, maybe I'll just vote for a third-party candidate." And one of them says, "Go ahead, throw your vote away."
I remember. Yep.
And that line actually got me very interested. I'm like, third-party candidate and throw your vote away. What are they talking about? Because I had only ever heard of Democrats and Republicans. And so I actually got interested in figuring out how our politics work from that episode, and we had encyclopedias and junk back then and started looking up all this stuff.
Encyclopedias. Encyclopedias.
But it's, I got pretty interested in politics as I got older. I listened to talk radio and stuff as a teenager. Was very excited for my first year to vote. I was in college for 2004. It was like I had just started college, and I joined this like get out the vote thing that was happening at college, and I didn't realize that everybody else in that group had opposite political point of view as I did, but they were nice about it, and they didn't like try to force me over to their side or anything. Then they let me participate and do everything. Like, they were very nice. But it was like it was very interesting to see that whole process and to help people like register to vote for the first time. And me voting for the first time was fun. Like, I enjoyed the spirit of politics. And that was probably the last time I enjoyed the spirit of politics.
That's fair.
The first time I voted. And then after that, it's just like, I know we were divisive. I know we were already starting to get divisive then. But it felt like 9/11 happened and we got a little bit more cohesive for a little while. But then, like, after 2004, it just started getting wider and wider of a chasm. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next topic. But yeah, that was Simpsons got me actually interested in politics.
Who's to say you can't learn things from television?
Right. I was also student body vice president 9th grade year. And that was fun. I got to be the voice of all of our pep rallies, like the host guy, the main guy.
That's cool.
And
that's when being the vice president is better than being the president.
It was cool, except I was the guy who unironically brought the WhatsApp thing to our school, and everyone loved it. But I'm so disappointed in myself because it got so popular in our school after I started doing it in the pep rallies that's what they named our yearbook. WhatsApp Marshall. And I'm like, oh no, no, now this is etched in history forever.
Yeah,
Yep.
what a grand legacy.
Well, thank y'all so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about yourselves and your political beginnings.
Yes, as always.
And y'all have what?
I was just going to say, I feel very impressed that some of you were able to keep out of politics for as long as you were able. So kudos to you and good parenting, I guess.
All right. Well, I love you guys.
I
Thank
feel like
y'all
that
so
was
much.
a stab.
Take care.
Love you guys.
This week we were talking about the state of politics in America. A week ago we had the midterm elections, which up until 2018, I would say most people didn't care about. A huge chunk of America didn't even go vote in the midterms for decades. But as we've gotten rapidly more divided in the last few years, we've seen midterms become nearly as active as a presidential election year. Now, let me be clear. We're not planning to push one party over the other. I am not a Republican or a Democrat. I have my beliefs and my morality, and there are people, even many other believers, who come to different decisions on where they land politically. We want to respect all that as much as we can, while still being honest with how stuff, our own paths, political paths. So today we're going to talk about what shaped our view of politics. So I kind of talked about it yesterday, early on. I got interested because of something I saw on The Simpsons, which is silly. But 9/11, I think, was a big deal when it came to the tone of America. Because after 9/11, it was kind of like we're all New Yorkers, we're all together, we're all, one, it doesn't matter if we're left-leaning, right-leaning, somewhere in the middle, we're Americans, and that's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. And then as we got closer to the 2004 election, George Bush versus John Kerry, with Bush Jr. trying to get his second term. That started to get I was listening to Rush Limbaugh. I was watching CNN News. I was listening to everything that spoke to this election, because I was very curious about how we actually get to where we get on election day, like how these opinions are formed, how we argue with each other politically, how points are made, all this kind of stuff. So I was listening to everything that I could. I told you yesterday about the college group that I joined to help get out the vote. And like I said, everybody else in that group was a Democrat, and I was leaning more Republican. And I could feel that tension in that first meeting, because I was like gung-ho to be there. I was all happy. I liked the first voting experience. I'm really excited. And I was open with who I was voting for. And we live in a very conservative area.
Yeah.
So I had kind of assumed that there would at least be some other people in the room. Everybody else was voting for John Kerry. And so I felt like a little bit of tension that first day, but nobody was ever mean to me about it. Nobody ever tried to sway me or anything. And, it went fine. And I didn't, try to impose anything on them either. And I think that's kind of how it should work, right? Respect other people's choices. They came to that conclusion somehow, some way, in their own journey, their own morality. I don't know their life. I don't know how they got to where they got. It's not really my place to judge them immediately, just based on who they're going to vote for.
Yeah.
That's a really antiquated idea today.
It is.
But I do remember, like, the first time I was surprised with somebody's political affiliation was I had just left youth group. Like, it was my first college year still there. And it was after the election, after the 2004 election, where my former youth pastor, who was still a youth pastor at the church, at this church, and I was working as the interim secretary while they were finding someone else. And we were having a conversation because we were both writing for a blog together. And he wrote something that I'm like, kind of sounds like he's leaning a little more Democratic than Republican. And so I just kind of asked him, I'm like, are you a Democrat? And he said, yeah, of course I am. And I'm like, that seems so strange, because it seems, from the impression that I've gotten of Democrats at this point is from Rush Limbaugh,
right,
which of course is going to paint them in all the most negative light.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it seems to go against your professed morality and everything that you kind of teach us, have taught us. And he goes, I don't see how. And he's talking about how the Democrats are usually who are pushing more programs to help the poor and, all these kind of things. I'm like, that's interesting. But they also have like the issue with, abortion or, all these other big topic things that have always had a slight religious, at least a slight religious overtone, an undertone. And we actually went about having a very long, multi-week conversation describing both of our different politics, and both of us, me just out of youth group and him at least 10 years older than me, both of us came to the conclusion, actually, we probably shouldn't be either one of these groups. And so we both stopped registering as either one of those groups.
Yeah.
And stopped affiliating ourselves with those parties, because it really started to become more and more apparent that even though one does lean in more, or at least historically has leaned in more of a Christian worldview, not nearly enough for us to say that's the party of Christianity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And in what we've seen. And I think that's only gotten worse over the years. I had, like I said, we both written for a blog at the time, and I did write a lot of political stuff. And even though I was listening to Rush Limbaugh at the time, he was a little too radical for me. And there just wasn't a whole lot of options like there are today. But I remember my brother reading some of my stuff, and he made mention that I sounded like a young Rush Limbaugh. And I did not take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
He meant it as a compliment. But I did not take it as one. I'm like, oh, I don't want to. And so I kind of scaled that back. Social media made it a little bit more, and we'll talk about social media specifically later in the week. But social media kind of got me more and more involved in it, but it also made me realize how quickly I could ruin friendships and stuff like that. So I tried to make it a point not to talk about it as much online either. But it was really, honestly, Celebrate Recovery that changed my mindset. And it changed my mindset about a lot of things, how I interacted with people. But it really changed my mindset of how I should treat people who believe differently than me politically. Because, again, it's all about, Celebrate Recovery is good about reshaping your empathy, your empathy for other people. And I think I had to really flex that most recently with the uptick in the discussion on abortion, with Roe v. Wade being repealed. You know, my initial thought as someone who's been against abortion in, you know, almost all cases, I was elated at the fact that got repealed and things went back to the states. But then I saw several fellow Christians who weren't as happy as I was. I'm like, huh. And so I really needed, like, and you know, your initial feeling is like, what, you don't agree with this? How dare you? But then the empathy thing kicks in and you're like, I wonder why.
Let's ask.
Yeah. Either let's ask or let's just pay attention to what they're saying.
True.
Because they'll give you clues or they'll just flat out tell the story. And I saw a lot of heartbreaking stories that, while they don't nearly change my opinion, I can understand how they got to that point. And I can be empathetic and sympathetic to that. And I don't, you know, too much of it is us wanting to just react without knowing anything, any of the story behind it or any of the reasoning that they've come to the conclusion that they've come to. And so that's where I will stop. But how did your politics kind of shape come to be?
So I will be really, really honest and say that I grew up in a home where politics were never discussed. I couldn't tell you if my parents voted. I couldn't tell you really which political side they leaned toward. I can't say that for definite. I have a guess. I have an assumption, you know, just knowing their morality, knowing their beliefs. But it was never discussed. I never remember seeing like debates of any sort being on the television in our home, or my dad really getting drawn into it. My mom definitely did not get pulled into politics of any kind. And it really wasn't until I became an adult.
You became adult?
I became adult. Became an adult. You know what? I'm going to start picking on you every time you say something wrong. And my husband was a part of the military that I had to at least understand politics at a very surface level. But I also had to understand that my opinions had to be very basic. They had to, and they weren't safe to just be said and spread around to just anybody who was listening.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but as a member of the military, you're not allowed to have like signs or whatever in your yard.
Correct.
Supporting one or the other.
Correct. Yeah. So because of that, I just kind of took a huge backseat to politics and just kind of felt like whatever happens, happens. It's how it's going to be. And I have to be okay with whoever the leader of our country is. I have to be. Because
I'm kind of remembering in our old podcast, because that was when like Trump was getting that first, only term, but it was the ramping up to that, where we had you on and we were talking about a little bit, and you were just like, I can't really like give my full opinion.
Yeah.
And it was just like observations that you gave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because essentially, I mean, that was my husband's boss.
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of the way that we had to look at it from a military perspective. And it has definitely become a lot more laxed over the last maybe 6 years. I think as social media has really taken a turn and just become very, very popular. It's just a part of everyday life at this point. There is no way to kind of put the reins on all the military spouses of the world, all the military members of the world, and kind of discipline people for the things that they say and their opinions. But early in Chris's career, it was very well known that you watched what you said. You did not go around just speaking your opinion concerning our government, concerning politics, concerning the commander in chief. You know, there was you watched your tongue. And I mean, I think that's probably the route that I would have taken anyway, just out of respect and not growing up in a home that was heavily politically influenced. All of that being said, every single year every single election year, whenever there's an election of whatever varying degree, I have this group of friends that are like, have you voted? Have you voted? Did you go vote? Are you voting? And it drives me crazy because for me, I don't walk around asking people if they voted. If you voted, then you voted. I'm proud of you. Great job. You exercised your right and your freedom as an American, which I do not take lightly. I really don't. I teach my students all the time that we live in a country, the country that we live in, we are blessed to live in this country because we have so many necessary freedoms and rights, and voting is one of them. So I don't take it lightly. However, at the same time, for me personally, it's not something that I can get terribly caught up in because I know my personality and I know the type of person that I am. And I will become consumed. It will become my every waking thought. And that's not how we're supposed to be.
Right.
As Christians, our every waking thought is supposed to be Christ and becoming more like him and making disciples and loving others the way that Jesus loves them. And I think making disciples, loving others the way that Jesus loves them, and politics don't mix very well. There's not a whole lot of room for those things to become intertwined. So while I have people that roll their eyes and huff and kind of shake their head at me and think that it's the worst thing, the worst abomination I could ever commit by not voting, I think I know what's best for me right now. That being said, I am looking forward to being able to vote once I am registered here in the county that I've actually called home for the last decade.
So you reminded me of something with where you talked about how your parents weren't really didn't discuss it a lot or anything. My parents didn't really either, at least not in front of me. But I do remember once when I was a kid asking my mom, are y'all, or are we, you know, like in our house, are we Republicans or are we Democrats? And my mom said, whatever one Bill Clinton is, we're not. And I said, okay. And the interesting thing is that this was during Bill Clinton's second term. I would watch Nickelodeon all the time. And Nickelodeon had news, like Nick News.
Yep.
With Linda Ellerby, I think her name was. And they talked about Bill Clinton all the time. They never talked about the bad
other
stuff that was going on during that second term and all the trial stuff, the perjury trial or whatever, the impeachment, and all the Monica Lewinsky stuff. Never mentioned any of that. Always presented him in like this good light because he's our president. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have. For kids, I definitely don't think they should have been talking about Monica Lewinsky on Nick News. But looking back to see that dichotomy, that change between what was on kids' TV about the president and what was actually happening with the president at the time. Like, oh, that's weird. And you don't want to ascribe like ulterior motives to that. But at the same time, I'm like, wonder if they did that for Trump. Like, did they put just all the good stuff for Trump or not? Because it was interesting to see like how the world treats like Obama.
Yeah.
Like Obama, you know, Hamilton came and performed privately for Obama, like all these big things. And Trump, it was just like, there's riots every day.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing good, and people are boycotting going to the White House, and all of a sudden, I'm like, this is an interesting thing. Like, we can't even just like get along superficially. Mm-hmm. It's now, if you're on the opposite side of me, you're evil.
Yeah.
And it would be wrong for me to even acknowledge you as a human breathing person. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about that as we go on in this week. But this week we are talking about the state of politics in America. Specifically today, let's talk about social media and how it has caused us to be more and more divided and divisive. Social media in general, we've talked about a few times, and how it kind of brings out the worst in us. And I think one of the ways it does this is social media has made us more bold because we don't have to be face to face with people. Like we've talked about it a lot. You'll say something on social media that's just so horrible and so something that you're not known for saying because you'd never say it in public. Like, you will get vicious, especially if you get to be anonymous. Like, if you get to be in a setting where you're anonymous, like you go on Reddit and you have a fake name and nobody knows who you are, it gives you such a boldness to just say everything that you've ever thought, all the terrible things you've ever thought that you want to get on paper. And it doesn't accomplish anything but stirs up more trouble. But Facebook, where you're not anonymous, has had almost a similar effect. Like, we've had people who can't be friends with someone who is the opposite political stance. Mm-hmm. Now, in some cases, I understand that if that friend is always posting about politics. Like, if you have a friend who is the opposing political side as you, and they're constantly posting, anyone who doesn't agree with me is a literal Nazi on their Facebook page, well, yeah, you're going to unfriend them, or at least mute them. You know, I don't want to see that all the time. I had a friend who believed very similar to the way I believe politically, who would just post all these rants that anyone who doesn't agree with him is, you know, going to hell and terrible. Like, I can't look at this every day. Mm-hmm. Like, but that's the kind of friend that would be bold enough to say it to your face too. And so I'm like, I don't hang out with this person either all that much anymore. But like,
that's not a good thing.
But like, with, especially in these last few years, like, have you had to mute more people for political talking on Facebook or any other social media?
No, actually.
I know I have.
So, okay. There was one specific person in my life who had to be muted all the time. And that was my father-in-law, but he's no longer with us. So I have not had to, and I feel like it's almost a generational thing, because I do see it more so in that generation.
Yeah.
Than
on Facebook anyway.
Yeah.
We're talking about TikTok.
Well, but I'm not on TikTok so much anymore. So yeah, I don't have to mute as many people, which makes me feel really good about my friend choices.
That is good. I've muted pretty much everybody.
Thanks.
That was that way.
I don't even post about political things, so.
Don't you, Mo? Isn't everything politics?
I mean.
No. Are you right?
My ear hurts. The headphones hurt my ears. We go through this all the time. But
you did like you got stabbed.
Okay, so listen, I got my ear re-pierced up there.
Oh, okay.
And it hurts.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
So it's also, social media and politics has also kind of affected families. We have seen, like, normally arguments about politics were kind of reserved for Thanksgiving when all the family got together.
It's true.
for the one time a year and just let everything out. But now, like you said, you said your father-in-law. I really think that is what, on Facebook anyway, most people are experiencing. It's their older parents, grandparents, that have always had these opinions and always got a good response for those opinions because they're around people that agree with them.
Right.
Purpose when they say it, out loud. And now they're going to put it all over Facebook because they have that kind of thought that everyone's going to agree with them. And if they don't, then they deserve ridicule. I'm not saying that's their initial intent, just like the background thought of, this is an okay thing to post on Facebook. Mm-hmm. This is a safe thing to post and everyone will agree with me. And enough people will that they'll feel emboldened to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And I have the urge every now and then to post something political. And I squash that urge because not once ever has it been a beneficial thing for me to start stirring up any kind of political thing on social media. Mm-hmm. I really wish Facebook and Twitter never became a thing. I'm at the point now where I wish we stopped at MySpace. MySpace, you had to go to your friend's page to see what they wrote. It wasn't in a queue. It didn't just keep flowing up.
You don't think that it would have evolved over time, though?
No, it did. But I'm saying I wish it didn't. I wish that's where we stopped. Okay. Because this making a news feed out of other people's opinions is terrible. It's been a terrible thing. I don't think the good has outweighed the bad with Twitter and social media. That's especially fair. Since they made it into the algorithm versions where instead of the chronological feed, there's always something new. It's always popping up, whatever you didn't see in the past.
Yeah.
So you're going to see every post, especially if you have somebody who posts the political things a lot. You're going to see every single one of their posts.
Yeah.
At some point, if you're scrolling enough. And it just fuels this kind of divisiveness. And I think it's also had a huge effect on our mental health. It has caused us to distrust people quicker because once you know their politics, that's the only thing you know about them and their opposite politics of what you believe, you can just write them off immediately. Because imagine how you make friends in real life. You make friends in real life by living life with them, usually it's like at work or school or wherever else, church. You're living life with them. You're not asking them about their politics. You're not asking them about what they think about all these different social issues. You're having everyday conversations and you're getting to know them through things that y'all both mutually enjoy. And then later in life, year later down the line or whatever, politics season's rolling around, you find out, oh, they believe a little differently than me. I can forgive that because they're a great person that I have gotten to know. And it's all right if we don't agree on everything. But if the first thing that you know about someone is a rant that they made about this, that, or the other in politics, like, well, bye.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's sad. That should not be how we interact with people first thing.
Yeah. So I will say during, when was it, 2008?
8?
Was that Obama's
the first one? Yeah. That was the Obama versus Hillary. Well, essentially, that's all. I think it was John McCain, wasn't it? No, John McCain was the second one. Who was the first?
It was Bush. Yeah.
No, Bush had 2 terms. I don't remember who was going up against Obama. Was it McCain?
Maybe it was McCain. I don't remember exactly. That was the year that we moved to Italy, though. And so leading up to it, and we moved to Italy the week of elections. So leading up to it, our best friends at the time were was it McCain? Yeah. Our best friends at the time were very, very different from us. Very different. But we never had any real reason up until that point to discuss politics or to discuss religion. And we got along because we were the same age and we enjoyed a lot of the same things. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have any children, but we had both of our boys, and they invested time in being like second family to our boys. We just got along because for the sake of getting along.
Right.
We found those commonalities and honed in on them. And it wasn't until we had been friends with them for a couple of years at this point. It wasn't until that year, that election year, that we really started to realize, wow, there are a lot of differences between our belief system and family structure, family dynamics, kind of what we want from our futures. Facebook was just becoming big. MySpace was big, but Facebook was just becoming a big thing. And so this was my first taste at like having a conversation, having really difficult conversations with people about my beliefs and what I thought was best in comparison to theirs. And I'm convinced if social media had been a bigger issue, a bigger deal, not a bigger issue, but a bigger deal, and if we had actually remained in North Carolina throughout the election, throughout the period of the election, I don't think that our friendship would have survived. But social media not being so prevalent and us leaving at just the right time, our friendship was kind of able to, we had to just do texting and emails. Yeah. And so that was kind of surface. But when we did get into deep topics, we were able to read and process and then respond. And I can remember that being like the first year that I was in Italy. That's how my friend Kristen and I communicated, was through text and email all the time. And every single time we both would go days without responding to the other one because we both had to process what the other person was saying, as opposed to just immediately responding to them.
Right.
We had to take that time to go, okay, wait a minute. Let me view this from their perspective. Let me put on a pair of understanding glasses here and remember that this person is not only just a random person, but it is someone that I care about, someone that I love, you know? And so every single time, every single election year that you see people who you love and you care about posting things that go completely beyond what you believe and what you think that they should believe, I'm taken back to that first year and my relationship with Kristen and how we were able to survive that and kind of maneuver through that. She and I are still friends to this day, and she and I still have very different beliefs. But I have to remember that just because it's different, and I tell my kids this all the time. In fact, I just told Topher last week, what is 3 + 1? 4. What is 2 + 2? 4. What is 5 - 1? 4. All of those things, we get to the same end result, but we took a different path to get there. And so if I can just kind of remember that at the end, regardless of what their political stance is, regardless of who they're voting for, truthfully, their end result is the same end result as mine. We all want what's best for our country.
Right.
We just have different ideas and have been swayed in different ways as to what is actually best.
Yeah. It's, again, it comes back to empathy, which we talked about previously. Social media with the quick responses and the riled up anger and all this, it forces us to have a lack of empathy. And like you said, all of us really want what's best. We disagree on how to get there sometimes, or all the time, and we disagree on what is best sometimes. But there's very few psychopaths out there that's like, the only reason I'm voting this way is because I want it all to burn.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But if you watch MSNBC or if you watch Daily Wire, you know, both those sides, you're going to see the opposite. You're going to see them saying, what I believe is good and right and going to protect democracy in America. And they're out there because they're of the devil or they're Nazis or they're whatever else. They're constantly demonizing the other side and even taking joy in their misfortune, which is so terrible. That's when you get to a point like I watch a few things on Daily Wire occasionally, but what it comes down to is now like it's mostly reacting to people who you disagree with having a mental breakdown because something didn't go their way. like taking joy in their sadness, reacting to TikToks. Like it was like when the abortion thing happened, when Roe versus Wade was repealed. A lot of folks who, support abortion, support, the pro-choice movement, got on TikTok and were just emotional and explaining why they thought this was terrible and kind of breaking down over it. And when you really look at that and you really see that this is their real emotion and this is their real struggle, like if you're looking at that through an empathetic lens, you can have your heart can break for them. Mm-hmm. Even if you disagree with them, you can still have an empathetic soul saying like, it sucks that you feel this way because of this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you have to feel this way. But the reaction now is like, let's compile them all into a big video and laugh about them for 12 minutes. Laugh at their pain. Mm-hmm. And the same thing happens on the other side. Both sides have been doing this now since social media became such a big deal. And it saddens me that we're not even trying to come together on anything anymore. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next discussion. This week we are talking about the state of politics in America. And for our last discussion this week, we're going to talk about how we can try to lower the temperature of politics in your life. I firmly believe, and we were there for this with the Back Row. We were there for this. It was our first year of the Back Row Baptist podcast. That Christians in politics changed with Donald Trump. Because I remember the discussion that we had, it was episode 11. Like we were barely going. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you were on that episode. But it was a discussion about, are we really going to pick Trump? Mm-hmm. We didn't have a lot of choices. It was Trump or Hillary at this point. It was already like they were picked. They were the nominees. But as Christians, we're like, is this really what we're supposed to do? Are we supposed to vote for Trump? Or should we just refrain from voting at all? And the thing that I saw that I just didn't like was all these prominent Christian figures. The only one immediately that comes to mind is Franklin Graham, but I know there were a lot. Initially came out against Trump and had a laundry list of reasons why. Mm-hmm. Like, we cannot vote for this person because of all these things. It is not, it is not a choice that aligns with our morality.
Yeah.
But then it came down to, well, these are the only two. And instead of the speeches being of, I guess we're voting for the lesser of two evils, it was just a complete flip-flop for a lot of these leaders. Mm-hmm. Like, of course I'm going to support Trump for this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason. I'm like, what changed about Trump? Who was, again, he was a Democrat most of his life. What changed about Trump in the last 3 months since you wrote that to this? Not much. Yeah. Other than the tape coming out of him saying that ladies let them grab crotch or whatever because he's rich. Like, how has your opinion changed? I really think that Christians are doing themselves a disservice in getting too intertwined with politics.
I agree.
Thinking that they're going to find some sort of national salvation in politics. One of Satan's grandest deceptions is that we can rest our hope for cultural morality and godly living in politicians and government officials. A nation's hope for change is not supposed to be found in any country's ruling class. The church has made a mistake if it thinks that it's the job of politicians to defend, to advance, or to guard biblical truths and Christian values.
Yep.
Republicanism is not Christianity. The Democratic Party is not Christianity. It's never going to be. It's never going to be. It's never going to be compatible. I think that, and actually, this is trackable. 20, 30, 40 years ago, when you look at like the Congress and, you know, the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. Like there's this chart out there that shows on things that they kind of agree on, things that they'll vote for both and all this. And back then, you know, there was obviously a red line and a blue line, but there was quite a few things where they overlap. Like, yeah, we can get along. We can make this work. There's going to be things we disagree on, but there are going to be a lot of things that we can get work. Now, that gulf between the red line and the blue line is gigantic.
Yeah.
With only one or two things ever anywhere near the middle in any given term. And it's become to the point where now, like this midterm election, okay? Listening to like conservatives talk about this, conservative commentators talk about this, the whole goal was just to take both houses of Congress. And the only reason was not to get anything passed. It wasn't to, you know, push anything forward. It was just to shut down Biden's presidency. If we can take both houses of Congress, Biden can't do anything else for the next 4 years. We'll have a lame duck president for the next 4 years. And like, that's our big win. Our big win is just to shut down America for 4 years. How have we got to the point where that's the best we can hope for?
Yeah.
In any given party? The same thing, you know, went on. Like with Trump, when Trump was president, the entire time was just all about, let's figure out something that we can impeach him for. And that's all it was. It was 4 years of trying to impeach him, all of them unsuccessful. 4 years of trying to find this, that, or the other. 4 years of Adam Schiff coming on saying, we've got tons of evidence that he's a Russian informant, and then never producing anything. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we just going out and laying breadcrumbs for things that never come to pass? What is the point of politics at all if the only thing we're doing is saying it's black or white, it's one or the other, and we're never going to come together and try and make anything good out of this? I get disagreements, and I get that they're going to be a constant thing in politics. But if all of the people that we vote into Congress can't even try to work together on anything anymore, I don't see the point of it.
Yeah.
I don't see the point of it at all.
I agree.
Well, what? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The difference between back then and today is so. And back then, it really wasn't that long ago. Like even when Clinton was still president, we were still getting things done. Things were still happening, whether we agreed with him or not. Things were still happening. But having, like, I don't know, do you remember when Trump was elected that for the first like 2 weeks, there were just riots in the street?
Yeah.
Like I remember watching live streams every night for 2 solid weeks. Of multiple cities where people were just walking around, shooting fireworks, throwing bricks,
Destroying property.
Yeah. And this is long before 2020. This is long before the, you know, George Floyd thing and all those riots that came with the BLM and all that. Long before this.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think people even remember that happening nowadays. But I remember thinking, is this how all elections are going to go from now on? Like we're just going to have half of the country destroy the other half of the country, or their own half of the country. Like, why are violent riots the reaction to just a president who gets elected that you don't like? Like, it wasn't like it was. It's a sad thing, and I'm not sure we're ever going to get back as a country to a point where we can work together. And so what we have to do is what we always have to do as Christians these days. The war's lost. We need to start just winning some personal battles. We need to try and affect our own circle, our own families for the better and encourage them to be better.
Yeah.
And so even if we just have little pockets of people getting along, it's a little bit better than the entire nation going to heck.
Agreed.
So one of my recommendations for that is to dump or at least severely reduce your social media.
Don't tell me what to do.
I have honestly said that many times, that if it wasn't for the fact that my jobs require me to use social media to get that stuff out as advertising, I would not have Facebook, I would not have Twitter, I wouldn't have anything.
Right.
Because what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, I like TikTok because their algorithm's good. I don't really
fair.
see a whole lot of junk
Yeah.
that I don't want to see anymore because they got a pretty good algorithm. And I can put my own stuff out there, and it's fun. If I have a funny thought or a funny thing I want to throw out there, I can. Twitter used to be that way. When it started, you could put out jokes. There's a lot of joke accounts now. It's just, even with Elon Musk, it's going to be just a terrible, terrible place.
Yeah.
It's never going to be good again. I kind of hope that it doesn't survive this transition with Elon Musk, and that they're just like, all right, let's pull the plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Elon is slightly eccentric enough that if it goes downhill enough, fast enough, he's like, yeah, you know what? We don't need to do this anymore. And it's gone. I hope. But anyway, Facebook, they've lost a bunch of money this year. They fired 11,000 people this last week, I think. I kind of hope Facebook goes the way of the birds eventually.
Okay, can I just make one request, please?
What?
If you get wind, like honest to goodness wind, that it's going to happen because you're a little bit more wise than I am in that kind of area, just let me know so that I can get all my pictures, please. That's the only way that I store photos at this point.
I am positive that they will, that if it was ever to go away, it would be well in advance. You'd know. So you can get all your stuff.
I'm just going to keep asking you every time, is this real or is this fake? Do I need to get my pictures or not?
You do have a lot of photos on there.
It's the only place I store my photos, which is kind of sad, but it is.
Brother Mod has a point here. Maybe it's cynical of me to say, but I also think part of what fuels all the strife and mess is that social media and the political establishment at large both make boatloads of money off of sensational tribalism. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. This sounds like a conservative conspiracy talking point, but it's not. It's confirmed. The Democratic Party actually paid money into a lot of conservative political things for these midterms if they were endorsed by Trump, because they thought that, and they were right, obviously, that they'd have a better shot against Trump endorsed people than they would against people that just kind of stayed away from Trump. And they're absolutely right. That's what we saw happen on the midterms. And that, I don't think that was, I mean, do what you got to do. I mean, that's a tactic you're going to use. Do it. What makes me sad is that our reaction as a society has just been about now this moving money around, playing with the money, making it all these kind of underhanded deals. The Steele dossier thing that happened with Trump, the whole Russian collusion thing that lasted nearly 4 years, was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton, essentially. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy to think about. And it's crazy to think about that they admit it. And it's crazy to think that they're not prosecuted or anything for it. Like, it's all scary. It's all nuts. And it also does kind of fuel like conspiracy theories. Because there are things that have happened now, verified happened in the last 4 to 8 years that sound like conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
That actually happened. And so now it's harder to debunk conspiracy theories. It's also so frightening and disheartening. The next thing I would ask is, if you're not leaving social media, unfollow political Facebook groups and bombastic accounts cut off the steady stream of politics in your brain. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to keep up to date on stuff and have opinions on stuff, but don't let it be like just constantly on repeat in your life. Either reserve it for like an hour, once a week, or 10-minute recap in the morning, read whatever's going on in politics in Washington, and then just go on with your day.
Yeah.
Leave it there. Leave it in that hour or that 10 minutes a day. Just have life.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. Mm-hmm. Don't let politics fuel or feed into everything else. Thirdly, and we've said it a lot this week, but empathy. See everything through the lens of empathy.
Yeah.
You can't assume malice of anybody who disagrees with you. You have to give room for empathy in every relationship and every action that you have, because otherwise you become the political monster. Mm-hmm. You become the person that doesn't assign any value to someone who doesn't agree with you. Mm-hmm. And that's a terrible place for you to be. Why? Because God gives value to those people. Every single person that you disagree with morally and politically and in any stance that, has a chasm in the middle, God puts value on those people that you brush off. Mm-hmm. God puts value on anybody who is not a believer that you push to the side because they don't agree with your politics or your stance on this, that, or the other. You brush them off because you don't want them in your life and you don't want them to even exist. And you have thoughts of, gosh, I just wish all of those would just up and die and we'd all have a fantastic Christian nation. All of those people you're just sweeping into hell. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they should be projects, but I am saying that you should have empathy for them.
Absolutely.
I am saying that you should show them the love of Christ in the way that you react to them and treat them. And I'm not, trying to lecture you. That's something I have to work on too. That's something that we all struggle with, because we all have that natural tendency to be like, what, they don't agree with me? How dare they?
Mm-hmm. I'm right, you're wrong.
But we have to get past that point of self-centeredness, really, when it comes down to it. Because haven't your opinions changed over the years? Do you believe exactly the way you believed 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
God, I don't.
But you believe you're more right now than you were then. How would you have treated yourself back then? If you ran into somebody who believed the way you did 10 years ago today, would you brush them aside for not believing how you do now?
And what is another 10 years going to look like?
Right. Absolutely. Ain't none of us perfect.
But we might think we are. But we're not.
And my last thought is that you need to remember that while you certainly should vote and support your values, remember that your comfort as a Christian in this country should not be your chief goal. Christianity is not the Bill of Rights. In fact, the Bible says, God takes our rights away as believers. We're His. He does with us what He wants, because we have surrendered our lives and our livelihoods and our families and our jobs and our money and everything that we do. We surrender that to God. God has all the rights in our relationship and in our lives. And so, I'm not saying you can't fight for the American rights. If you want to fight for your right to bear arms and your right to free speech and all that, I get it. Yes, but those are not innately Christian things that you're fighting for. Those are American things you're fighting for. Don't intertwine them with your religion. Mm-hmm. Don't make them the same thing as, God's law, the biblical ideals rather. Don't make them part of salvation. And don't act like if something is taken away from you in the future, that makes your life as a Christian like different, harder? It's supposed to be. We're not supposed to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Christianity in nearly any other country on this planet. We're super comfortable here, guys. Super comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If the worst thing that ever happens to a Christian in America is that he can't own a gun 10, 20 years from now, I have no answer to. I don't have the second part of that sentence because it's ridiculous.
Then hold fast to the verse that says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper."
Absolutely. Like, I'm not saying that'd be a good thing
Right.
in America.
But where is our hope?
Exactly.
Is our hope in what we have and what we can do and our rights? Or is our hope in God?
Mm-hmm. So again, fight for what you believe in. Sure. Vote your values, vote for what you believe in, but just don't confuse it with God's plan for your life.
Exactly.
Don't confuse it with God's decree on how you're supposed to treat other people. And I think that's all. I got.
Yeah. I want to say this is a thought that I've had in several conversations throughout the last couple weeks, and it just keeps kind of coming up and becoming just something that I feel like I need to share more and more, and it's probably because I need to hear it more and more. But with Christians, there's a lot of black and white. We all tend to live in that black and white area of right and wrong, good and evil. Sin is black and white. God is black and white. But I think what we tend to forget is that God is love and God is grace. And that grace, when you truthfully look at it from the perspective of God that we can't understand, we can't even begin to fathom, but when we try to see it from his perspective, grace is gray. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of gray in grace.
I think we get into that idea of, we're supposed to be black and white from that verse of, be hot or cold, because God doesn't like lukewarm.
Yeah.
And I get that, but I don't really think that's talking about like the minutia of life and how we get to where we're going.
Yeah.
I think it's saying, that's something we should strive for. Be all for God.
Mm-hmm.
But life really is gray.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're having to meander through. We're having to go through the gray to find the truth.
Uh-huh.
And in some cases, we're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna come to the complete right decision, get everything right. I mean, even different interpretations of the Bible come to a couple different conclusions on how certain things are worded or certain things are.
Right.
Like, we're never gonna get it 100%. God's the only one that ever could.
Right. And I'm thankful for the gray area of grace. I'm incredibly thankful for it because God doesn't just look at me and say, I can't believe she said that. What was she thinking? She's a total moron. Why did I ever breathe my life into her? But instead he looks at me and goes, wow, Megan, you really messed up on that one. Okay. I'm going to work it together for good. I'm going to figure out how to make this all come together. But I also know and understand why you said that. I remember the thing that happened to you 15 years ago that caused you to be in the mental state that you are in today, that caused you to think the way that you think and believe the way that you believe, and caused you to say that really moronic statement that you just said. And I am so, so incredibly thankful that that is what grace is. That God looks at me and doesn't say, you're an idiot, but instead says, you messed up, but I know why. And I'm going to cover it in grace.
I had this whole grand plan for humanity, and then Mo just came along and screwed everything up.
Megan opened her mouth. Exactly. I think when we begin to look at each other and we begin to see each other, even our enemies, through a lens of grace, understanding that we don't know all the inner workings and all the tiny details of their life that cause them to get to where they are. when we can take a step back from our own pride and say, you know what? I don't agree with everything that you do, and I don't even like everything that you do, but I respect you as a person. I respect you as someone who God loves and cares about. We can begin walking in grace towards everyone around us, and that would make things a whole heck of a lot better.
It really would. I will leave it at that. That is our discussion for the day and for the week. We hope that you'll join us again next time.